This episode of Jackie's Groove is brought to you by Jambox. Jambox is a hands-free, breath-powered MIDI instrument that brings the joy of music creation to all ages and all abilities. Visit jambox.com, JAMBOXX.com.
I like to impress upon the fact that to be a musician, it's not an easy profession. It's a very hard profession because you've got to go the very straight and narrow road to be a musician. And the best thing you could ever do, and I don't know, what you believe in or what you don't believe in, but you have to have a spiritual guidance.
Absolutely.
If you have that, you can conquer anything because that's what you need to have because
Absolutely.
You can't do it alone. You can't do it alone.
Welcome to Jackie's Groove. Come journey with us through the rhythm of the music business with your host, Jackie Bertoni.
Everybody, welcome to Jackie's Groove. This is Jackie Bertoni, brought to you by Intertalk Media. Connect those things, music. Hey guys, it is June the 13th. Happy Hump Day. Let me tell you right now, I have said this many times. I'm looking forward to this interview, but today I'm looking very forward to this interview because I go back with this family more years than I want to admit. The fact is, I go back with my guest's son, Peter Michael Escovedo, all the way back to the days of Lionel Richie. His daughter is a very good friend of mine. I had a chance to play with her last year at the LP Traffic Jam at Center Staging. His daughter's name is Sheila E. And also another amazing musician, Juan Escovedo. And I'm not going to forget my girl, my Facebook friend, his daughter, youngest daughter, Zena. So you guys, with that said, I want everybody to welcome with open arms and open ears to Jackie's Groove, the legend for over 50 years, Mr. Peter Pops Escovedo. Peter, welcome, brother. Pops, welcome.
Oh, thank you, Jackie. Man, what a pleasure to be on your show. I love this. This is great. And you know what? You bring back so many memories because I remember when we just used to get with all the guys, all the great percussion players and all the younger guys. They all just, we're like a big family anyway, all those guys that play together. And so it's been so much fun over the years to know you play together and all that great stuff. Yeah, cool, man.
Thank you, Pops. Hey, Pops, I want to ask you a question. Do me a favor, say and give kisses to Mama, besitos to Mama Juanita when she comes back from her errands, and tell her I send my love. I'm going to send you a picture of the three of us at the NAMM show a couple of years ago, or 3 years ago, and it's a great. It never gets old. But Pete, what I want to find out about, in fact, the listeners, I'm going to call you Pops from now on. Pops,
sure,
what I want to find out, out of all the awards, out of your 5 decades in this business, and being the father to these great aforementioned musicians that I talked about before, my question is, and the listeners worldwide want to know, you'll always be a musician, but what turned you for a quick second from musician to a writer for the memoir, My Life in the Key of E? Take us behind the scenes on that writing of the book. Was it your idea, or was it the family's idea, or was it from the fans worldwide? Go ahead, it's your stage.
Well, actually, it was my very own idea, and the reason for it was because as I looked at my life, and sometimes that happens to everybody, your life just comes across your mind, and you start thinking about things. And I started to think about, I have grandkids, I have great grandkids. and I wanted them to know who they know their grandfather. Some of the young ones, the great grandfather, they don't know what my upbringing was, how I got into the business, the music business, what evolved around the family, how we all, participated in music and all that stuff. So I thought it'd be a great idea just to write a memoir describing, my original upbringing from my dad to my mom and just the whole family and just everything that happened to me. A couple of pages I do of a tour that I did with Santana and what it was like to be on the road, what it's like to be a musician, the ups and downs, all the crazy stuff. And so yeah, I thought that would be such a good thing to do. And I am so happy that I was able to do that.
I'm not one who reads, but I'll tell you, songs, my life in the key of E is amazing. It's a great, as they say, a read. And Pops, I want to ask you a question. What was the time that you sat down with this idea to write this book to the time that it was published and out on the marketplace? How long of a duration was that?
It took about 4 years for me to put it all together. And like I said, when I started out in the book, it was kind of a rainy day here in L.A. I wasn't doing much. And so I just started thinking, I said, you know what, I'm going to start writing down some things, some thoughts that I had in my mind. And so once I started, it's like, and as you know, I'm also a painter, so I do artwork also. So, what happens is once you start, it starts flowing. And if it's something that has to come out easy, and for me, it was easy because I kept actually a journal of a lot of the stuff that happened through us over the years. So all I did was go back into those journals and look at the time, the dates, what we were doing, that kind of a thing. So it was a lot easier for me to just remember all those days because I had a lot of it written down. So it was pretty easy on putting it all together because I had everything. Every journal was of, I guess, every year, that I kept the journal. So
sure.
Once I started going into that, then it was easy for me to, recollect all those things that happened during that year. Yeah.
And Pete, I want to ask you a question. I know, me being 58 years old, I'm still a kid as opposed. Now, you are now 82 or 83. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'll be
83 this coming July.
God bless your heart, man. And may God bless you with the best for that. But I laugh on myself because I have to repeatedly say, hey, well, when did you play with? When did you play with? When did you record this? And I have to revert back because my memory's not always there. And I have to revert back to what I've done growing up and so on. I when I talked to your son, Peter Michael, we talked about our first time we really got a chance to hang out was up in Oakland at the Oakland Alameda Coliseum complex when he was playing with Lionel. And I said, songs, songs like All Night Long, when you would say, jumbo, jumbo. And I said, do you remember those words? And your son sang the word. He goes, of course, I sang them for 15 years. And I got to tell you, the audiences worldwide were knocked out by that situation. And then your beautiful daughter, Sheila, and all of our mutual friends, through Prince's band that I had the opportunity to interview, except for John Blackwell. We lost John, last year, or actually this year. We're losing too many people. And that's why I think it is amazing that I have the ability. I said to Peter, can I please interview your father? Because, and I don't want to sound morbid, Pops, but when you're gone, so goes the history. Last year I had the ability and the honor of interviewing your good friend, Wilfredo Reyes Sr. And, and so with that, I talked about the industry and so on and so forth. Step all the way back to when you were a kid, when you were growing up in the Escovedo household. What was coming through the speakers, through the Escovedo household that Mamita and Papi were listening to, that you said to yourself, God, I love that music, or better yet, I want to create music like that? Who was that, Pete? Share with us.
Well, you know what? It goes back to the early years of my growing up, because my dad, who was Mexican, and he was from Mexico, came to this country when he was very young and married my mom, who was from San Francisco. And my dad always had an ambition of being a vocalist in a big band. That's what his dream was. And so he would constantly go to these places where big bands were and try to sit in, meet the musicians. And once he did that, once he, made friends with all these musicians, he would invite them over to our house. And so our house was actually the main spot where all the parties were after the gigs and stuff like that. Cool. So all of us kids grew up in that environment. And when I look back and thought about becoming a musician with my brothers, Coke and Bobby and Phil, it was the same thing. All the parties were at my house. So all of my kids grew up in that same environment. So I think all of that had so much to do with how we became musicians and loved the music so much, because of my dad and my mom. So after years of, we all come from the Bay Area, Oakland area, where all of us the kids were born and everything. And so that area was a hot spot for so much different styles of music, because you had the Santanas, the Marlos, Tower of Power, all of these bands, all of them were just playing so much music. And the thing that was so cool about it was that we all knew each other. We were all friends. And so there were times where they would play with us, or we would play with them, or we would go hang out at the rehearsal, or we would go to the gigs. And it was just that kind of environment that you grow up in that kind of thing. And I think that's what happened to us with the style of music that we play. Although my main thing is Latin jazz, but at the same time, we listened to R&B. The kids were listening to Michael Jackson. The kids were listening to Earth, Wind, and Fire, and just all of that. So I think over the years, a lot of that stuff stays with you and stays in your mind. And so that was my calling for this new CD. When I said Back to the Bay, I went back to the Bay to just create some of those old R&B songs, but put a twist on it by doing it Latin jazz. And so it all worked out really great for me.
Let me step in real quick and tell you that I have been one of the 1 million listeners that have downloaded and have watched from Back to the Bay a song called, it's a great song by Mr. Al Green, called Let's Stay Together, fronted by an amazing vocalist by the name of Cy Smith. And I got to tell you, Pops, watching this video, sitting in the backyard of this gorgeous house with everybody, that's singing, my friends, Oscar Cataya on bass, Justo Mario on sax, and the other guys playing itself, that twist, of you leaning over and giving Cy a kiss on the hand. Whose idea was this to employ Cy? In fact, Cy sang on so many of the songs on the album.
I have to tell you that that whole idea was the real idea coming from Peter Michael, my son Peter Michael, because he does a lot of Sheila's videos, and he wanted to do this video on our song, the song that we did, and it was all his idea. So it was actually done at Sheila's house in her backyard, which has a beautiful house and a great backyard there. And so we invited our close friends and some of the musicians, and to make it a very casual kind of atmosphere kind of scene, which it really, really worked, because that's the kind of thing we were shooting for. But all those ideas and all of those things come from my son, Peter Michael.
And Pete and Pops, I want to talk about that. Let's guys write this down on the Back to the Bay, In the Stone. What You Won't Do for Love. Let's stay together. Don't worry about a thing. Never too much. I can't help it. Portuguese Love, which made famous by, by Tina. I Want You, La Costa, and You Were Meant for Me. My question, I want to find out, all these great entertainers, whose idea was it to bring Howard Hewitt to sing on I Want You, the great Marvin Gaye tune? Can you share with me on that? Whose idea that was? Was that yours?
Yeah, well, we thought, we were thinking about who are we going to have. We wanted to have some special people. We were very fortunate that we got Bobby Caldwell to sing his own hit. And then because we've known Howard Hewitt for many, many years, sometimes when we pray, he drops by. We always bring him up on stage to sing songs and stuff. And he's a great guy, a great friend. And so we invited him to. We thought that this song would be perfect for him. And man, he killed it. He really did. He really did a great job. And as well as Bobby Caldwell. So,
Pete, I want to ask you a question. Because someone asked me not too long ago in an interview that I was being interviewed, how I chose percussion. Now, I grew up in Whittier, California, Southern California, East Los Angeles, to a 100% second generation Armenian mother and a 100% second generation Sicilian father. And I grew up with the likes of Bobby Goldsboro and Engelbert Humperdinck and so on and so forth. But my mom and dad, every 30 days, every month, used to have a Latin party in which it was my duty to sprinkle salt all over the garage floor. So everybody was doing cha-cha and montonos. They were able to sashay across that. And my mom never put sticks in my hands because she didn't want me to mar up the furniture. So she bought me the quintessential pair of bongos, if you will, the light and dark wood with a little tacks around the outside of it. And I always made a joke, Pops, that I said I always grew up playing with Santana until the needle broke. So I understood, I grew up listening to Latin music, montonos and, momoños and so on. But my question to you is I want to ask, when you grew up with both Pops and Juanita and all the kids we talked about, did they understand what Dad was doing immediately, or did they have to grow into the vein of Pops is an entertainer?
Yeah, they actually, you know what, they were very, very aware of what I was doing, playing music and stuff, and they were all very supportive. But even when they were so very young, they had other ideas of their own, because the two boys, were into sports, and Sheila also was into sports. So that was their thing then. But once they got into that magical thing that happens to them when you start playing, that took over. That just took over. And they realized, wow, I want to do just the stuff that my dad's doing, because they would come to the gigs. I had both the boys working as roadies in the band, and then I noticed how great they were playing, and I said, well, you guys might as well join the band because you sound great. They knew all the songs, and of course Sheila started so very young, and her thing is that she went on, progressed very, very rapidly, and he took over management and took over her career. She just skyrocketed up, and only because she really does have so much talent, and she really knows the business very well, because they saw what Dad was going through, they saw what I was doing, they saw all the musicians and all that stuff. So they grew into that whole environment. Yeah.
When you surround yourself by the best, like my good friend, your daughter's former manager, and Lynn Mabry. I love Lynn like my own sister, and your daughter and her are still best friends. But the situation with Sheila and so on, I mean, how could you, being a father, and how can Juanita, being the mother to, these talented musicians itself? I mean, it's ongoing. People don't realize that Peter Michael, is an Emmy-nominated, songster. All the great work he did as musical director for TV programs. And then with Sheila, with her work with VH1 and MTV and so on and so forth, and all the longevity that Juan's had in the business. When you sit down with these kids, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren, are you encouraging them to follow in the footsteps of Pops and their aunts and their uncles, or are you letting them choose their own direction in life?
Yeah, I actually let them choose their own direction. But of course, I would love them to be in the business and carry our
Sure.
legacy on, into the future. I would love that. And some of them are, some of them are involved in music and the entertainment field, with a lot of them in my grandsons, they write music, they record, they know how to do production in the studio. They're all learning things that they're best suited for. And so, we're proud, so very proud of all of them. But I don't like to, which I never did with my kids. I never stood over them and beat them over the head and say, hey, this is what you got to do. No, I've never done it. I kind of gave them, just a free opportunities to do whatever they wanted to do. I didn't, once I kind of just, every now and then I would kind of just show them some basic things as far as, rhythms and patterns and stuff like that. But I wasn't one to stand over them and say, hey, you got to do it this way and don't do it that way. Because, as Sheila plays everything left-handed style. So
absolutely.
So it's different. And the boys, they all have their own way of playing also. And they all play different. None of them play the same. They all have their own style and their own way of playing. So I like the thought that I gave them a free hand for them to just choose whatever they wanted to do in life. And if they wanted to be musicians, which I'm so happy that they are all, and I'm so very proud of them for all their accomplishments, because they've done so much, I mean, I look
so much
at
more to do.
There's so much more to do, but they're great in the studio. They're great producing, videos, recording, playing with different artists. They can go and play with anybody, anybody who calls them to come in and do a recording. And they know what they're doing. They know how to complement whatever recordings they're doing. I mean, they're just great. They're very, very, very professional.
Pops, let me ask you this question. I've asked the question to all your kids, and I'm going to ask them to you also. And I don't want you to be humble here. I want you to be honest, because, we mentioned a little while ago, up in the Bay Area, I started out with a group called the Tower of Power back in 1979 as the percussionist for from 79 through 81. They just celebrated 50 years at the Fox Theater, June 1st and 2nd, celebrating in Oakland, gave them their own day and their proclamation for the, for the Oakland sound. And with that said, I know when I came and I left, I didn't leave Tower of Power. I was asked to leave because the budget fell out. But with that said, when you come with the moniker TOP behind your name, people are nervous about hiring you because they think that they're not qualified or you're overqualified as a player. So now with that said, let's step back for a second. Let's step back before Sheila was Sheila E. and before Peter Michael was Peter Michael and Juan was before Juan. What kind of pressure do you think the kids were under by carrying that last name Escovedo?
I imagine that it was a little difficult for them because, whoever called them, they were expected to be the best. They were supposed to, they were expected to know their job and what they're supposed to do. And the good thing about that is, even for me, as I look back on my career, the same thing. You don't know all the answers at first. You really don't. And the only way to get those answers, you have to get your feet wet, and that get the experience of playing with other people. Because I've played with rock bands, I've played with Latin bands, Stephen Stills, I played with Anita Baker. I mean, those kind of things that you do, you learn all the time. You learn what your job is supposed to be, what they expect from you, what the artist expects from you to do, and how to play in their band. And so you have to, it's all about listening. It's all about listening to all the other musicians, what the musical director wants you to do, what the artist wants you to do. And that's your job, and that's what you do. So by doing that, you gain the experience, you move up the ladder because you start to play with better people, better musicians. You start learning. Our experience of playing with Billy Cobham, Sheila and I, was just overwhelming and tremendous because we had no idea what the jazz fusion was when we started playing with him. And to learn to play in all those different time signatures was not an easy job, but he made it. Yeah, he made it easy for us because the guy was just, to me, I consider Billy one of the greatest drummers in the world. And Billy is so advanced in what he does and how he plays so differently that rubbed off on us. We gained a lot of experience playing and recording with Billy. And these other guys were on the date, people like George Duke, John Scofield. Those guys were on the record date that we met, and that's how eventually Sheila went with George Duke, because he heard her play and he wanted her in the band.
And if I can break for myself, I just got hired to work with Buddy Burnell and Stanley Clarke on the new album. And so am I nervous? Yeah, I'm definitely nervous. It's definitely going to be a day of Tums and Pepto-Bismol before I walk into that studio.
Right.
Now, and Pop, do me a favor, walk back 14 years with me to a great concert that you did, a great video on a show called The Hang. I was introduced to that video from my good friend Phil Perry, who was one of the vocalists on there. You played along with Oscar Seaton, with Harvey Mason, with Alex Cunha, and Grusin, and the list can go down even more and more and more. When I watched you play congas versus, I don't remember if you played timbales at all on that itself. And I got to compliment you. You don't look any different now than you did back then, 14 years ago.
Oh,
did you have a good time surrounding yourself between you and Alex on drums and you on congas? Do you prefer playing congas or do you prefer playing timbales? What is your taste? What's your flavor? What do you love to do the most?
Well, I really prefer playing timbales. I don't play congas as much as I used to do, but
right.
I back then I did play a lot of congas because my brother Coke played timbales. So
of course,
whenever we were in bands together, I would play congas, he would play timbales. So I really got used to just playing congas for a long, long time. And environment you have to be in, whoever calls you to be in a different thing than what you're used to, you have to go in feeling very confident. Of course, you're going to be nervous. All my time playing with some of these guys that I knew were just such great dynamic players, and they could play around me hands down. But you know that whatever you do, this is what you do. You have something to offer, or else they wouldn't call you, right? So they call you because you have something to offer, whether it be not as great as what they do, but still you're contributing. And so
absolutely,
that's something to always keep in thought in your mind, that when you arrive at these kind of situations, you always have to think, well, I have something to contribute of my own that they don't have. You have a different way of playing, a different outlook, a different ear, a different style. So, and this is what you bring to the table. And they know that and they accept it. I recently did, and which I've done quite over the years, there's a group called the Latin Jazz All-Stars, which is put together by a promoter in Atlanta, Georgia. And what he does, he calls mostly all the New York guys, all from back east. I'm the only one who comes from the West Coast. So when I go and play with these guys, their whole style of playing East Coast Latin jazz, salsa, whatever, is completely different than what we do West Coast. Right? Absolutely. You know that. So when I go in there, here's what happens. Everybody brings a couple of charts. We never rehearse. When it comes time for the gig, we go into the dressing room, we talk over the charts, we go out there and we play. We never know how it's going to start or end, but it works. And it works because you're playing with top guys. You know, all these guys that have played in different kind of situations. So, and you have played in different situations. So, yeah. So whatever that is, that's what you do. And believe it or not, they look at you like, man, this is cool. This is a different way of doing this.
Yeah,
you know?
man.
So yeah, it all works, but it's also, to me, it had always been very challenging because every time they put this guy, the promoter, puts the bands together, it's always a different band. There's always different personnel. It could be Steve Teray on trombone. It could be Arturo Farrell on piano. You know, these guys from New York that are, you know, they've been doing this stuff from age one, that they, you know, they know this stuff so good, man. And you know, it's stuff that, in a sense, that I had to learn. So,
yeah, man.
Yeah, it's always challenging, but it's always, man, when you get through playing and you walk off the stage, you just pat yourself on the back and say, hey, man, I did it. I got through it, you know.
Yeah, man. You know, and it's that whole vibe of the East Coast, West Coast throwing their own stank, for the lack of a better word, on the sounds and kind of giving the standard song a different kind of a vibe, a different swagger, if you will, by playing and bringing what we bring to the table. Now, with that said, I want to ask you a question. You know, you being in the business for over 50 years, and I don't want to sound like an old man myself, but does, you know, if with everything that you brought to the table, obviously, you know, being relevant in the industry all these years is because you're a great player. When you are up playing, do you find yourself, while you're driving or being driven or listening to today's music or the lack thereof, does Pops Escovedo get today's music or the lack thereof?
Well, I can honestly say that, I everything that's going on today, the styles of music, the difference in the way people play nowadays and stuff. And I look at that, but at the same time, for me, as my own personal way of playing and how I chose to play, see, my thing is that I watched all these guys play many, many years before I started. I watched Tito Puente. I watched Mongo Santa Maria. I watched Armando Pedazo. I played with all of them. I've played with, you know, Ray Barretto. When you play with these guys and you look at them and you watch them, that was my school. Sure. I didn't have any lessons. Nobody told me, hey, this is the way you do this is the way you do that. This is the beat. No, I had to go and watch and listen. And I listened to all these guys, and I was so very fortunate that I got to play with them. And so every time I played with them, man, that was a learning experience. I've sat on the side of Mongo Santa Maria and played. I played with Armando Pedazo, you know, Ray Barretto, Willie Bobo. I mean, all these guys, you know, that was so great. Of course, the great Tito Puente. I mean, and
of course,
and a lot of people say that my style is almost, like Tito. That I do have a style, and that's only because I watched him for so many years, and I admired him for so many years, and still do. And to me, he is the greatest ever timbale player ever lived, and will always be.
Yeah, so, I'm good friends with this. I'm good friends with Tito Jr. You know, and Pops, I want to ask you a question. You bring up a great point about, you know, today's music and so on, and I have to ask this question because I'm always curious to find out. Has today's music technology changed what you do for the better or for the worse?
Well, I must say this, that it has changed tremendously, but there are good parts and there are bad parts.
Share with me the good parts.
First of all, the good parts is the technology is very, very, makes things more professional, sounding better, especially recording and all of that. Man, the technology is unbelievable. How you can work in the studio, even to do you can do a whole CD in like a day or two.
Exactly.
If you apply yourself and go in there and know all the what buttons to press and what things to do in there. It's like, man, you can do it right away. The old times, you had to go in there and spend a week and 2 weeks. I remember recording with Carlos. Sometimes we would go into the studio. It would take us a month of recording, every day, going in there every day, trying to get the stuff right, and nowadays, you make a mistake, it can easily be fixed. You've got Pro Tools, the technology is amazing. But the bad side of this is that it's not teaching the young people real music playing, and that's the thing, because it's cutting corners on what you do. Yeah, so you're not spending the time. If you're a saxophone player or a piano player or whatever, or a drummer, I mean, you can go into the studio and get a whole drum track, and you just play along with it, and you can get away with it, But that's the bad part for me, is that with all this technology, we're bypassing the real instruments. And that bothers me, because
shedding.
Because I'm old school. I like to go into the studio with everybody in there in the same room, and we play and record. Or you either do the basics first, and you just keep piling stuff on. And a lot of times, you don't even need to have the person in the studio. They can be in another city, and you can still send in the files. They record it and send it back to you. You know what I mean? Yeah. You're not there saying, hey, man, how about doing it this way? It's crazy.
Pops, being in the business 50 years plus, the new album, Back to the Bay, did you find yourself, how do I say this, being 83 years old next month, did you find yourself struggling more, or was it like breathing to you? Was just were you 30 years old back in the studio when you made this new recording?
This new recording was so difficult for me, and you're right, because a lot of things I had to do, especially a lot of my parts, when you come to overdubbing, and I'm so used to just playing with the whole band in there, and that's what inspires me. That's what lets me play with fire and and energy. But when you're overdubbing, you have to be very careful, because you have to really listen to the time, and a lot of times,
of course,
a lot of times they start out listening to a click track, so the click track is there, and everybody has to play at that speed. And so you don't get a chance to really do your stuff the way you really want to. So it was a little more difficult for me on this recording, because it was so different. But what made it a lot easier for me was the fact that my son, Peter Michael, he produced it. He engineered it also. And he really knows how to do it and get the best out of everybody.
Sure, of course.
And which he really did. So everybody, we did the basics, and then if we overdubbed the whole horn section, he was right there. We were both right there in the studio directing and making sure everything came out right. But it was more of a real different process than what I'm used to doing.
Hey, Pops, who wrote the horn charts to Let's Stay Together? I love that change, with the trombone, with the sax, and with the trumpet. Who wrote those charts? You remember?
Well, I had different writers this time, different arrangers. Usually, back in the day when I was doing most of all my Latin jazz CDs, I would use Wayne Wallace to do all the horn arrangements, and he's an amazing writer. A lot of songs that I used to do back then, too, was written by Ray Oviedo, so the guitarist. So on this one, I thought we would use different arrangers. So we used Francisco Torres, who's a trombone player and actually played with Poncho Sanchez, and he's a great horn arranger. So I used him. I used another person that actually from the Bay Area that actually arranges for Pacific Mambo, and he did. Oh man, he did an incredible job on a lot of the songs. And you know what was really cool about the whole thing was that the guys came in to record. A lot of them offered their own ideas, which I love. I mean, you know, I don't like to have guys come in and record and have them just be silent. You know, I want them to put their ideas into it, you know. So, like if a piano player was playing, he goes, well, why don't I, at this part, why don't I do this and play these notes to make this better? And sure, you know, and that's what you want. You want guys like that come in and contribute. And all of them did. They were all so great, man. They were all incredible.
And Pops, let me ask you this question. And again, I use the term, don't be humble with this. Let's talk about Peter Michael. Let's talk about Sheila. Let's talk about Juan. Do you still think they are intimidated even when they walk in the studio with Pops?
No, not at all. Not at all, no.
I don't mean that as a negative.
No, not at all. You know what? Yeah, they when they come in and it's their part and their times to record, I basically let them do what they do best, and that's their own style and how they want to play and how they approach the song, and what they could do to make it better. So, and I have total confidence in all three of them. Yeah. Yeah.
Now, let me ask you this question. It's very important to me. At the age, I'm going to call you 83 already. Okay. I'm going to age you just by about
That's
a month.
Okay.
Does Pops have a bucket list?
A what?
A bucket list. Is there an entertainer, dead or alive, that you really, really, really wanted to play with or to play with?
Yeah. I do have a bucket list.
Share with us.
Yeah, and first of all, I would, I like Ivan Lins, who does Brazilian music. His writing and his musicianship is so great. I caught him one time at Yoshi's with his group, and man, it was fantastic. The Brazilian players and the way they play, I just really, really admire them. And I would love to do something with him someday. Yeah, either have him on one of the recordings, some Brazilian song or something, or maybe even do a whole CD of Brazilian music with him in it. That would be great. That's on my bucket list. Also, I know you know about Arturo O'Farrell and the Jazz Alliance Orchestra. They've been doing tremendous work. In fact, I spoke with him yesterday, because Sheila was in New York and she was doing a concert, and that he was in there directing it. So we spoke and we came out with the same exact thing. Man, we got to get together and do something. And so that's on my bucket list. So yeah, there are musicians I would love to play with that I haven't played with, and so yeah, that would be great. The other thing is some place where I haven't played. I would love to go to Cuba and play, to do a concert over there. I never have been there, and I would love to go.
You know who goes there every year is Wally Sr., Wally Jr., and Danny Reyes and Liliana. They go there for the big festival there, and even Richie
festival.
Yeah, and Richie Gajate Garcia, our mutual friend. Yeah, when he goes down there, man, he says to me, Jackie, it's even though the music, the Cubano vibe, the music itself, the way it's written, is changing, because even though the old school stuff has always been in place, it goes back to the younger players that are bringing a new flavor to the rhythms itself. Now, with that said, we talked about Montono, we talked about salsa, cha-cha, and so on and so forth. What style do you find yourself most comfortable playing that you really love, that you got that groove going?
Well, I really like playing cha-chas, of course, and mambos, and I really love that. But different styles of it, because I if you take, like we did in the Stone, we started out as a samba, but there are sections where we go into a straight mambo. And so for me, and the way I've sort of taught the kids, and I taught them not to rely on the clave, because I know old school in the Bible is you got to have play to the clave for all of the Latin music. But for me, I disregard that. Whether it's right or wrong, I don't know. But this is just because it's my style, that I don't think about the clave at all. What I do is if we put a break in there that's against the clave, that's fine. As long as, if it works, we do it. If it doesn't work, then of course we're not going to do it. But we've been able to do that, where we could change 2-3 and go 3-2. We could do that.
Absolutely.
And we could even just take it completely out and do it in a different way. So yeah, I'm comfortable in doing just the way I do it. See, I've gotten to a point, you get older, I hate to say stubborn, but maybe I am stubborn. But
of course we are.
Yeah, but
that's something you deserve. That's something you earned.
Yeah, and I like to do things my way, because this is who I am. This is what I've strive to be over the years. You get to a point in your life where this is what you want to do. This is the way you want to play. This is the songs you want to record. You get where it's personal. That's why I'm not with any record company anymore. I don't want anybody telling me what I have to play and what I have to do. I record under my own stuff, and that's the way I'd rather have it. So yeah, it's a whole different ballgame.
But it's so cool that you said that, because I remember years ago I was playing with Ron Powell, the great percussionist, with Tanya Maria.
Yeah, Ronnie's great.
And Ronnie's a great player. He's admitted my friend. I was at their wedding back in 1979, even before I got married to him and Pat. Mm-hmm. But I remember playing with all the luminaries. Chalo Eduardo was playing, and all the guys in the band. And I picked up this thing called a tambourine, or a tambora, which is a Brazilian, if you will. And I was watching Ronnie using his middle finger and going over the skin on top of it. And so I started playing shakers. I was playing aluminum, the tri-shakers. And then after the gig, I was just amazed. And I looked at Ron and I said, how did that sound? And was I doing it right? And Ronnie looked at me and said, how did it feel? And that's the term I use to a lot of young players, man. It's not how it was written, but how did it feel? Because believe me, if you're playing out of your wheelhouse with great players, they're going to kick your ass, and they're going to hand your ass in your hands. And to play with that, and when you garner enough information, you get those chops up, and then when you feel secure to walk in and start playing, then you do so. And when you're not up to snuff, you're going to be told also. Probably be told in different ways. But the old joke was, Pops, growing up, got some good news and bad news. The good news is you got a lot of chops. The bad news is you got a lot of chops. It's a situation where it's not what to play, it's what not to play. And
sometimes less is better. Mm-hmm.
Less is more, sometimes as they say.
Is better. Yeah.
Okay, Pops, let me ask you this question.
Before you get to that question,
go ahead.
We just did sort of like a clinic, me, Sheila, and Peter Michael, at a church in L.A., and they were all drummers. So they were really young drummers, and some of them were, exceptionally good. They had great chops and stuff. And that's one thing we encourage them. It's great how fast you play. It's great how many things you could do. But at the same time, if you're in a band, you're not going to be doing all that stuff,
absolutely,
playing in a band, unless It's just your solo. So you've got to learn how to play. Sit on the time. That's the first thing. And then when it's time for you to play, when they say, okay, this is you shine, then you can do all that stuff. But to try to do all that stuff while you're playing with everybody else is just going to get in the way. So a lot of times, less is better. So, yeah, and then they were very receptive of that comment, yeah.
Pops, do me a favor, and this is the question I wanted to ask you. What would you tell a younger Pops about the music business and about life?
Well, usually I like to impress upon the fact that is this what they really, really, truly want to do? And do they love doing it? Is this something that is your calling, that is your passion? It's because it's going to be your life. Your life, to be a musician, is not an easy one. You're going to have ups, you're going to have downs.
A lot more downs.
You're going to make some money, you're going to not make some money.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it's not an easy profession. It's a very hard profession because you have to be on your toes. You have to be accepted, which means, don't go to an audition with cut off shorts and a sweatshirt and a pair of tennis shoes. Go dressed nice, represent yourself perfectly. Mind your manners, don't go in there saying a lot of bad stuff or talking about anybody bad. You go in there and do your job. Whatever they tell you to do, you conduct yourself in a professional manner. It's all about that, because there are musicians who are great and they don't get hired because their attitude is the worst.
We won't mention any names.
They could be great players. Yeah, but man, their attitude is like, hey, man, I want this guy in the band. He's never causing trouble. Or people that, are alcoholics or drug addicts, or, you can't have that. You've got to go the very straight and narrow road to be a musician. And the best thing you could ever do, and I don't know, what you believe in or what you don't believe in, but you have to have a spiritual guidance.
Absolutely.
If you have that, you can conquer anything, because that's what you need to have, because you can't do it alone. You can't do it alone. And with God's help, whether it be God or whatever you look up to, you need that. Yeah.
And Pops, I say this, I say it, so wholeheartedly. You just said about being spiritual, being belief, being born and raised a Roman Catholic like I was, but I always tell people, if you want to find solace in the rock on your front porch, if that's what you want to pray to, then knock yourself out, man. You'll knock yourself out. Right. You cannot do this by yourself, and you're lying to yourself when you say you can. But what I want to ask you, which is so important to me, I first want to say, I want everybody to go to Pete Escovedo, that's ESCOVEDO.com, to study about this man. And then I also want you to go and pick up his book called My Life in the Key of E. It's a memoir. It's all about the history. It's more than 1 hour of talking on Jackie's Groove. It's amazing what this man has accomplished. I get really warm every time I see you and Juanita walk through the NAMM floor. And when I saw you at center staging, it's like, I know Sheila, so I can care less about talking to Sheila. I can care less about talking to Peter, Michael, and Juan. But a chance to sit there and to talk to you. When the network came to me and said, Pops wants to do the show, I got to tell you, man, I smiled. And I want to say one thing I said earlier, because, when you go, Pops, when it's time for you to go home, you take those memories with you. And through the memoir of sharing your memories. But I want to ask you this question in the last 3.5 minutes of our interview. What's the one thing that you would leave as advice or a lesson or a legacy to the family and to your fans? Will you share and will you expand on that, please?
Yeah. Well, first of all, of course, to the family, that I hope that they look to me as a good father. That was the first thing. I really wanted to be a great father. You know, I come from a broken home. I've been through ups and downs with my immediate family, my mom and dad and stuff we went through. But for me, that was such an important thing that when I said earlier when I was going to get married, I said, I'm going to get married only one time to one woman. And luckily for me that I found Mom's Juanita, and she has been at my side and part of me all of these years.
They put up with all of your shit. Exactly, man.
Yeah, exactly, man. And that's a lot of shit. Let me tell you.
Tell me.
Yeah, she just been is so incredible for me, and together we have raised some incredible children. And so I would like to. The first thing is to say, well, all of my kids and grandkids, great grandkids, to say, man, you know, Pops was a great father, a great grandfather, great grandfather. And that's the most important thing to me.
Of course.
Secondly, I would hope that people look at me as that I contribute something musically in my life, that I have contributed something that will last. As when I'm long and gone, I hope that that music lives on, the music of what I recorded, the music of Azteca, you know, that I hope that all of that still stands, you know, which I hope that would come true.
Yeah, man. You know, it's you know, we look at situations and we learn to respect our elders, but we also learn. You know, we lead by example. And I think what you've done in the way of raising your beautiful babies is an understatement. You know, it's so funny. I interviewed Al Jarreau before we lost Al earlier this year.
Yeah.
And I said to Al when I interviewed him, I said, does your son play music? He goes, my son can't carry a note in a wheelbarrow, and that's okay. And then I look at someone like Wally Sr., when all of his kids, Wally Jr., Danny, Liliana, Kumar, and so on, and then everybody in your family who's carrying the torch of the Escovedo name. I thank you for gracing my show, Pops. I've been a fan of yours, man. No, man. I mean, it's just, you know, and I got to tell you, my favorite thing about Let's Stay Together, the video with Cy Smith, is not Cy singing and not everybody that we mentioned earlier. It's watching Mama Juanita play gyro better than anybody can play it, man. And she's grooving and she's dancing with Zena. And it makes, in fact, when I sign off, I'm gonna put it up there. And I defy anybody to stand or sit down when this tune is playing. So with that said, we're gonna sign off right now. Pops, thank you so much for being part of this. Thank you so much.
I love speaking with you. You bring back some great memories, and it's such a blessing to know you, and it's a blessing to be on your show. And I wish you all the best with health,
Pops.
prosperity, and everything, man.
Pops, peace through music. I love you, man, and we'll talk soon, and we'll see each other soon. Guys, patronize Pete Escovedo Sr.
All right.
Be well. God bless.
Take care, man. God bless. Okay. Bye-bye.
This is Jackie Bertoni from Jackie's Groove. Come join me weekly on my journey through the music business as I take you behind the velvet rope, interviewing industry notables such as Al DiMeola, Michael McDonald, and Al Jarreau, to name but a few. Listen to their stories on being in the studios recording #1 hits and onto the stages throughout the globe. Allow me to be your music historian. You can hear me live every Monday at 2 p.m. and every Wednesday at 12 noon Pacific Standard Time or 24/7 on jackiesgroove.com. Ready to get your groove on?
Hi, this is Tim Dolbear from Eclectica Studios. I'm a full-time mixing and recording engineer. I work with Grammy winners, labels, and indie artists, using state-of-the-art digital mixing and restoration tools and the very best in analog gear. Really, though, it's my ability to bring tracks to life and fulfill your vision for your music. This has made me sought after by producers and artists worldwide. So spend your time working on music and not chasing a mix down a rabbit hole. Go to timdolbear.com and check out our free one-song mix offer.
You know what's all around you every waking moment of your life? Marketing. You're choking on it. I'm Scott Robertson, and when it comes to strategic PR, branding, and marketing, I've seen it all.
And actually, I'm still seeing it because bad marketing never sleeps. Join me each week on May the Best Brand Win, right here on InnerTalk Radio, and learn how to make the marketing for your brand unforgettable.
Are you serious about your music? Are you ready to run with the big dogs? The experts at Pitbull Audio have the gear to get you into the game. From leading manufacturers like Mesa Boogie, Fender, Pioneer, and American Audio. To sound your best, you need the best. Pitbull Audio can deliver in rehearsal, on stage, and into the big time. Dropping beats, shredding guitar, or making the crowd roar. Whatever you dream, Pitbull Audio can help make it happen. We are Pitbull Audio. We want you to play it loud. PitbullAudio.com.